There we go. If anyone isn't on Slack, maybe they can message someone they know who is. If they want to nominate somebody, do you think that would be a good way?
I like you doing it. I think you've been great. I like how you do it, but I mean, I'm open to anybody else doing it, but I don't think people are jumping up and down to do it. But it doesn't look like a fun thing, but I think you're doing a great job. I think Sky does a great job. I think everybody, doing.
Thanks, Karen. Well, okay. If anybody wants to nominate anybody else to conduct, you can always send them to me in an email. You can just send me their name, or you can bring it up in the Slack if we want to get a conversation kind of going on there for anybody else to throw names out there. Okay, so that's one thing. So here's a little agenda tonight. I'm very inspired by Sky's meetings because I'm a scatterbrained individual and I have a really hard time conceptualizing structure, and I think she did an awesome job in her meeting at being very clear about things and having structure, so I'm taking notes from her. So a little agenda for tonight. Here's what I'm thinking. We'll open up our meeting with a little debrief in case anybody attending live or watching the recording is looking for more information about what these meetings entail and what has led up to them. I'm still meeting women who don't know what happened last November. They haven't heard about the document yet. And so I think maybe if this is going to be a meeting that people find on the recordings, or if there are new people in here tonight, it might be good to give a little background information. And then I'm going to share some resources in case anybody's looking for those in the recording or live tonight. We already had our prayer by Michelle. And then we'll begin our conversation on the provisional document that was accepted last November. And then we're going to wrap our meeting up around 9 Mountain Time. And so about 15 minutes before that, I'm going to ask you guys some questions regarding future meetings and then tell you my idea for the next meeting. After that, Marlene will close us out with a prayer. And yeah, that's kind of our agenda for tonight. So, and normally I'm not going to talk this much. It's going to be a lot more open, but I feel like we're kind of starting a new chapter in our meetings. And so just want to get these resources out there and get your guys' thoughts on how we go forward from here. Okay, so let's get started with a quick history and then how you can find more information if you're looking for more information. So I'm going to send a link to Cammie's website. This is where you can find a lot of different resources for information about women's councils, women's conferences. I wonder if I can share my screen. Okay. Can someone give me a thumbs up if this is working? Can you see my screen? Thumbs up. Thank you, Amy. So, this is Cammie's website. If you're looking here, this is some information about the November conference. I think that's really up in the air right now, so I'm not going to touch on that. She has a document here that she's made about different resources to use in conversation. You can find the link for these Zoom meetings right here. So if you're ever looking for that link, it's right here. God's Coming People. This is the website, Women of Peace, for last November conference. So this is when we voted in the provisional document. If you click on Women of Peace, you'll end up on this website. You can find information about the April conference. This website, I think, has been taken down. This is where you get the document. So you can access the document right here. You can watch the Zoom meetings that happened before we had that conference. And then these are the recordings of that conference. My daughter's asking. And then this is a really awesome document also. It's called Priesthood in Our Day by Sarah Lowenberg. That's a great resource. That's like basically everything that Sarah could find in scriptures and revelations about priesthood in our day. So if you're looking for all of the different places where you can access revelations and scriptures on women's councils, that's a good resource. If you need to have a women's council, very helpful. So there's that. Here is a link for the past Zoom meetings. So if you want to watch meetings we've had in the past, they're all linked on this YouTube channel. And then this is information about the Fall Women's Conference. And I think those are all the links I wanted to point to. And then here's Stephanie's document linked also. So since tonight we're discussing that document from last November, I'm also going to share that link if anyone wants to pull it up on their own computer. Here's that one. And then I'm going to send my email in case anyone wants to give any questions or suggestions. You're welcome to email me. And then I should stop sharing my screen. Another thing, there's another Zoom meeting series going on right now. If you want to be in touch about those, this is the email to access. Those are conducted by Sky. So you can email her at remnantlabors@gmail.com. And then you can hear about those Zoom meetings. And then I think there are recordings linked to that email that she'll add you to so you can watch past meetings. And then I think that was all I was going to say about that. But yeah, those are another Zoom series going on. Like I said, I love the way she's conducting those. They're very structured, and I had a great time going hers last week. So there's a little bit there. Okay, almost through this stuff. We'll get through it. So this is a little background information. Last November, a women's conference was convened in Utah following the June 20th revelation. This was the Women of Peace conference that we looked at on Cammie's website. If you click on that link, you can watch the recordings of that conference. You can find 2 documents. That's where you'll find Sarah's document, Priesthood in Our Day, and then you'll find Stephanie's document. That is Provisional Guidelines for Women's Councils. And then I also want to mention the Slack group. So there's a Slack group where there are ongoing discussions about women's topics. If you want to get on the Slack group, you can email me, alaniabishop@gmail.com, and I'll send you an invitation. There's all kinds of stuff going on there also. We're talking about women's councils and women's conferences in one of the channels, but there are other channels where we're talking about sourdough, covenant of Christ, marriage, other gospel discussions. It's been a really great place to connect with people. You can have like one-on-one conversations with people there. So I want to throw that out there for anyone who's interested. And okay, last thing. So in past meetings, we decided to have a 5-minute maximum for each person's comment. So please be considerate and just try to stick to that time frame so we can try and hear everybody's voices. If Amy is available, she'll be timing you while you're talking. So if you just go to her screen, if you can go to where you can see her picture, then you'll be able to see your timer and know where your time is at. And a few weeks back, someone had mentioned the idea of kind of doing open mic and raising hands. We were raising hands exclusively for a while, but to try to keep some cohesion, we were thinking maybe we can give people the opportunity to respond back to back. So say Karen makes a comment and Kylie wants to respond to Karen. Then this is what we're thinking. Let's say there's a third person too. Let's say that Michelle also has her hand raised, but she wants to just add a different topic. She's going to change the subject. So if Karen's talking about home fellowship and Kylie wants to jump in and say something responding to Karen, then Kylie, you could raise your hand and then send to the chat responding to Karen. And then I'll note you as a response to Karen. So once Karen finishes talking, I'll call on Kylie first since she's talking about the same subject. And then Maybe Karen will want to respond again, so I'll call on Karen again so she can reply back to Kylie. If Kylie wants to go again, I'll call on Kylie again so she can go back to Karen. And if that's going on for a while, that back and forth, then I'll jump in and say, okay, how's everybody feeling? Kind of take the temperature of the room. Do we want to keep having this back and forth, or are we ready to move on to Michelle's comment and change the subject? So that's kind of what we're thinking to to keep some cohesion in the conversation. Now, Amy just sent in the chat, you see, my question to Allie, what's good? So if you want to ask a question, but you don't need to necessarily jump on and give a whole spiel, you can just type your question in the chat, just say question, type your question, and then once Karen finishes her thought, if Kylie wanted to just send her message to the chat, I'll just read Kylie's question aloud and Karen can respond. So that's a little bit there. Those are your two options so far.
So Allie, are you saying then leave the chat for only, so don't make comments in the chat except for just saying like, if you're trying to comment on a certain thing? I mean, I'm just, so that it doesn't get lost. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's okay. Everyone, you're totally welcome to keep commenting. I'll write your name down. So if you say, I want to respond to Karen, I'll write you down so you don't get lost in the chat. I'll be watching closely. And yeah, you guys can keep talking in the chat as you do. And then, so you can raise your hand. If you're going to comment to Karen, raise your hand and type in the chat responding to Karen. Or you can just send in your question and I'll read it aloud. Those are two options. Or if you just want to comment and it's not to Karen, you just have a different comment, just raise your hand. So, okay, that's a lot of stuff in the introduction. Sorry to take so much time on that. Hoping that will work out. And next meeting, I won't have to bore your ears off all night. I think that's about it. Thank you for bearing with me. I just want to say that I'm very grateful for everybody who's here tonight. Thanks for taking the time out of your fun summer, hopefully, to practice reasoning with us and having this conversation. And I think we're ready to start discussing. So, I've got a question. We decided by common consent prior to this meeting that we were going to go through the document sequentially. So there was a question, do we want to go through it by subject? Do we want to say, okay, tonight we're talking about daily walk? Or do we just want to go through the document page by page, line by line, one out? So we're going to go through sequentially, but I'm also wondering, before we kind of dig our teeth into the document, would you guys like some time to just talk about broader scope and purpose of the document? Do you want to talk about your thoughts on it as a whole? Do you want to talk about just how you're feeling? And I don't know, look at it in a broader sense before we just start digging into specifics. What do you think? So, Emmeline says a brief overview would be nice. What would you like to say, Karen? Go for it.
I was trying not to say anything, but everybody's just so quiet. But I think that's a great idea. And I did want to say something real quick about when you were summarizing, in case there's somebody that hasn't watched. I think I kind of recognize most people's names on here, but in case somebody wasn't at the November and was watching this recording, that on Sarah's document, we did vote unanimously to sustain or support that, live by that. And that basically is just what the Lord said. So that's what Sarah's document just kind of went over, all the things that Denver has pretty much taught us pertaining to women with how we got to function with the priesthood and so forth. And so we did accept that. So in case somebody wasn't aware of that. But yes, I like the idea of kind of maybe sharing some feelings or whatever.
Thanks. Thank you for adding that also. Okay, well then let's just open the floor. Everybody, you can start chatting about whatever you want to chat about. I'm so sick of hearing my own voice. So take it away, Karen. I nominate you first. Just kidding. I'm pulling your leg. Somebody else can talk.
Marlene had her hand raised.
Go for
Can you
it.
hear me, Allie?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, I'm excited that we're going to do this and go over the document. I did have some concerns when we voted on this in November. I'm glad that we are giving it some time to look at and talk about as a big group. One of my concerns is that this document, from my understanding, and anyone jump in if I don't have this correct and help me understand. But part of this came to Stephanie based on the 23 pages of questions that she received before the women's conference, after we went through the 3 Zoom calls. My concern as I read through some of those questions that were submitted, it seemed heavily slanted. I don't know the best way to say this, but I'm just concerned that this document may not be based 100% on everyone's feelings, because I know I submitted questions and none of my questions were acknowledged in this statement. And as I read through these questions, it seemed like quite a few of them might have been submitted by just 1 or 2 people that was leaning heavily with one belief system. I don't know how to say that in a nice way, but I personally, before we even start reading this, I mean, I want to be a team player and I want to hear what you guys have to say. But in my heart, I feel like we've already been given enough with the scriptures that we have, with the revelations Denver has given us. And I'm just concerned that if we add too much structure and rules and regulations, I think we're heading away from Zion instead of towards Zion. And the reason I feel that way is there'll just be more things to argue and disagree with and dispute over. And I'd rather err on the side of allowing each women's council to have a little more autonomy and to lean toward using the spirit more than rules and regulations. But that's just my opinion, and I'd love to hear from the rest of you. Maybe I'm wrong and you can help me understand your feelings. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thoughts, Marlene. Go for it, Ellen.
I just wanted to say I agree with Marlene. I wasn't ever part of the November conference or the Zoom meetings leading up to it. I was like totally out of the loop. So from what I know about the document is that it was supposed to be like a trial kind of thing. We try it out and then vote on it again later on. Do I have that correct?
That's my understanding of it. Was we voted that we would use the document for a year and then vote on it again this coming November. So that would be kind of the thing that would initiate having a November conference, because it would be time to vote on that again.
Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, overall, I am of the side of less rules and regulations and restrictions. I feel like the more we have and the more we ask for, the more it's kind of like the people of Israel and the law of Moses, and like they never had enough and they wanted more instruction, more specification, and I think having more rules, it takes away from, and I like what Karen said in her letter, something along the lines of it takes away from our opportunities to discuss with each other and to go to the Lord in prayer with each other and to receive answers on the very particular situations that we may find ourselves in, because there are, the more rules we add for each individual, very, very specific situation that arises, it's just, I feel like it adds more chaos. That's the only word that I can use to describe it in my mind. And it's just, you then have to look at all these rules and make sure you're following all of them instead of using the simple and clean and concise words of the Lord that we already have to make decisions based on. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Emmeline. So we have a question in the chat that I'll read if no one else has their hand raised. Question: what will the November vote actually be on? If the document is, quote, accepted by vote, where does it belong or live, and what are the ramifications? Is it added to scripture, or what does accepting it mean? So I don't know if anyone wants to answer that, but I think that's a great question. Go for it, Michelle.
Go. Nah. Sorry. Okay, so what I want to ask is there a difference between adding rules and regulations and coming to agreement on how to apply the principles in the Constitution and Bill of Rights?
Thanks, Michelle. Could you ask that one more time? Thanks.
Ask me to amend my- Okay. Oh, I found it again. I'm getting better at this. Is there a difference between adding rules and regulations and coming to agreement on how the principles of the Constitution and Bill of Rights apply to women's councils? Do you actually have to set something in stone? I mean, does that make sense?
I think that's a great question. Thanks, Michelle. Go for it, Karen.
Okay, I was hitting the thumbs up thing. Anyway, I was messing up what I was doing. I think that's a really good question too. Personally, I think probably everybody knows enough what I'm going to say. I think that you can come to agreement. What I'm trying to advocate is, well, first off, I would say this, Michelle, like in your prayer when you were talking, one of the things where maybe you and I differ just a little bit is you're seeing I believe from what was said in your prayer, that the way that you're seeing that part of the revelation is you're seeing that as instruction that we all now have to decide something about that together. I don't see that part for me. That is stated before we're ever told anything about having a women's conference. Sorry. It is just addressing, hey, women's councils in general going forward, you guys need to take into consideration the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the divine principles taught in there. I don't think we've talked about this a lot before. I don't think it's an apple to apple correlation. It just doesn't even work that way. There's all kinds of things that we're required to do as women that don't apply in a court of law. Like we've even said, a court of law, you're not allowed to even know who the jury is. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things. It's not like you can't take that and plant it over. I feel like the Lord was saying in that, that to remember those things, not that we had to create something, and that when he said, as you decide how to conduct your councils, that's what I was trying to say in my letter. I feel like he's speaking to the individual councils. So if somebody in my fellowship needed a council held on them, then I am with the women that are working with me to do that, the 12 women, that we should be very, very aware of what the spirit of those divinely inspired principles are, and make sure that we remember those and implement them when we hold this council. I didn't take that at all as meaning we now have to reason together and come up with rules and agreements of this is how you're going to do it, because
Can you stop for just a second?
yeah,
Okay, so as soon as you say rules and regulations, I just feel like it's like this,
trigger,
like this.
trigger.
No. It's like there's a path, a neural pathway in your brain that it just suddenly comes into rules and rules. And
Okay.
what you're saying right now is we would still have to agree whether we agree with what you're saying. Because if we're
Sure.
going to keep having this
Absolutely.
argument as to
Absolutely.
whether we have to agree or not agree,
Absolutely.
we're not in agreement. So I'm not
agree, Michelle, I
saying that
agree with you.
anything is going to make us have to set rules and regulations. But we do have to come to some kind of agreement together.
I agree. Absolutely. And that was the proposal of my
Okay.
paper. You really look at my paper.
Okay.
What it's saying is, here is an option, an avenue of how I was trying to invite us to consider. Let's not take the thought process that we have to be making rules and regulations that are hard and fast, but let's leave open the idea that we could come to agreement to agree to allow that to be optional. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, what I think is we have to get on the same page of what we're thinking about stuff. And it doesn't have to, I mean, like I was thinking about this the other day when I was walking down the sidewalk. I'm walking on the right side. Somebody was coming at me. They were walking on the right, directly in front of me, and they just moved over and went the other way. It wasn't even, but that's just kind of a social agreement we have. It's not a rule. There's no
Exactly.
rule
Yes,
around that you're going to get
yes.
arrested by the police if you don't do this certain thing.
Amen.
But socially, you just know what is expected of you. And so
That's beautiful, Michelle. Beautiful. That's what I was trying to say in my letter. I think it's like speaking past people because they're not really, I think it's hard to actually really, I'm not very good at articulating what I'm saying, but this is exactly what I'm trying to say is we can talk about, like, I'd love to delve into the concepts and principles of why would it be important to do X, Y, and Z, right? So
Yeah.
like, why would that be good? Why would you, Michelle, find it valuable and worthwhile that this would be implemented? And why would it be important that we, let's say something maybe that I've heard Kalisa feel strongly about, and that is that she feels like you got to make sure you're giving sufficient time for the man that has the accusations brought against him, right? What I would be advocating is not to come up with a rule of like, all right, it is 5.5 weeks and 2 hours and 15 minutes. I mean, that's extreme, but you know what I'm saying? Not to come up with maybe an answer to it, but to discuss how important and beneficial that is. And then I can walk away without making a rule about it and say, oh, when I put on my council that if I ever have to do one, I can see that's a really big deal. I'm going to make sure I do that. But I don't have somebody, it's not now mandated, but we've engaged in enough of a discussion with one another that all of us women walk away going like, light bulb on, I see the importance. There's so much common sense here, but we don't have to make it in a rule. So what I'm trying to say is, to me, that is like having the discussion that God wants us to engage in, and the interaction and the hearing without feeling that threat of something is going to get forced upon you. It's kind of like inviting us to, obviously you do exactly what God said to do, but on this other stuff, okay, that's my time. Is that what that's saying? Anyway, okay, I'll be quiet. But I don't know if that makes sense, Michelle, because I think we agree. I think we've just been talking like past each other, or I think I just didn't explain what I'm thinking well enough because I didn't have my hands in the paper, see? And I can't talk.
No, that's what I was so angry about you. I was so angry with you because this is exactly what I've been trying to get people to start discussing when I first And then you launched into paper after paper trying to tell me how evil it was. And then I didn't understand that this was all going to come of evil. And I kept trying to say, wait a second, you don't have to make a rule whenever you're discussing something. It doesn't have to end up like this. Voting can just help you to know whether you're on the same page. I mean,
I think
and
you're
you just kept
misunderstanding my
arguing
case.
with me. And I'm just like, okay, so now you're going to say that you can understand this? Well, you could have understood it back then if you would have listened to me, but you didn't want to listen to me. You wanted to argue your point. And so it was super frustrating to me.
Wow,
So
Michelle, okay, calm down. I think you need to calm down
That's
for a
funny.
minute. Yeah,
Okay.
because honestly,
I
I
think that's
think
really
if
rude
you
of you to
read
say
my
that you didn't calm
paper, if
down.
you read my paper, then I don't even know why you're not seeing that's what I said the whole time. I think
Do
I
you
made
not
it.
have a memory? Okay, do you not have a memory of what happened like 6 weeks ago? Whenever I was trying to ask people to start opening up a discussion on this, and you sent out pages then saying that what I was doing would come of evil, basically, and that it was adding to, taking away, making rules and regulations. And I tried to explain to you, no, that's not my
Michelle,
intention at
I
all.
had a new paper out and it said,
I know. I
aha,
know.
with a new
I know.
perspective.
Okay, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to talk about it anymore because it's taking up everybody's time. Okay,
Okay,
so
okay.
and it's not because I'm
I feel like
emotional. It's because I know whenever I'm not being heard. So there's no
wow,
reason
I
to keep
thought we
talking
were
about it.
hearing each other. I'm totally
Okay.
lost. I'm okay. I don't understand. I'm lost. Sorry.
Okay.
Jump in.
So yeah, let's just end it then, for the sake of everyone who has to.
It's okay. It's okay. I think that
It's actually not okay because this is the sort of thing that we're supposed to work out. And I'm kind of confused. I actually wasn't going on here to attack. I was actually saying we were agreeing, and I'm not sure. I feel like you have a lot of pent up animosity about something. And you went on the email with it, and I'm confused a little bit about it. I feel like in this Zoom, your voice escalated with anger, and I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. So
we have some hands up. Looks like Annette's hand is up. Is it okay if we go to Annette?
I want to jump in because I'm going to practice using what you said we could do. I want to respond to both Michelle and Karen, who I love them both. Will you guys work this out between yourselves and just don't involve the rest of us? I would love for you two to talk to each other in person or on the phone and work through this. Obviously, there's some misunderstanding, but I don't want to hear you guys fight anymore. Thank you.
Annette, go ahead.
When we're having this discussion back and forth, I am hearing, I just came from a meeting today, and the subject matter was nonviolent communication. And it is some tools and skills in which you kind of zero in on your personal feelings. And when someone is speaking, you give your whole attention to that person, and you kind of try to empathize with them and I'm not an expert at all. I'm a newbie, okay? So I'm trying to just express what I've heard. So usually we have feelings because there's a need inside of us, either a need to be understood, to be respected, or whatever. And they had some excellent handouts today, which I'm going to kind of work on because it helps you to identify what you're thinking and feeling, and then you can learn skills at communicating with each other. And we really need these tools. So if it would be helpful, perhaps I could make a copy of my handouts or something, and we could email them out to everyone. I just think as women, when we come together, we just need some skills to reason together and to hear each other with empathy and compassion.
Thank you, Annette. I would love if you made a copy of your handout. I would love to have access to that and give anybody else that opportunity if they would like access to that. Thank you for your comment. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Michelle. I know that got a little bit heated for a minute, but I think you made a good point, Karen. This is kind of what we're here for. We're here to learn how to reason together. And so I want to acknowledge each of you and understand that you see things differently and it's emotional. And I understand that I also get emotional and have a hard time. And so it's okay. It's okay to have these conversations. I think it's going to at times get heated, but I think it's good for us to work through it. Go ahead, Karen.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry about that, ladies. I honestly thought that I was agreeing with Michelle. So I'm sorry, Michelle. I I wasn't trying to fight with you on that. So I don't know how that went that way, but it did. So I apologize to all the women on here, but anyway.
Thank you, Karen. Go ahead, Emily.
I would be in favor of starting to go through the document and discussing that, if there isn't anything else that others want to bring up.
Thanks, Emily. It looks like somebody's raising their hand. So I'm wondering if that's in affirmation that they'd also like to discussing that. Is that what you mean, Monica? And it looks like Khaleesa has a comment, so we'll go to Khaleesa next.
I like the idea of going through the document. I also appreciate the conversation that just happened, specifically because it was, well, one, because it was about principles. And I think that looking at the Bill of Rights and Constitution as we go through each one of the items in the provisional document is a fantastic idea. And two, I appreciated the conversation that just happened because it's hard. And it's difficult to work through those things. And I felt like, gosh, it's nice to like actually step into some things and then be able to step back out of those things for a minute and then think about them and then revisit them. So I don't think anything bad just happened. I think what just happened was really, really, really good. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate both of you guys speaking up and being willing to like work on both speaking up and work on your communication skills. That's awesome. Good freaking job, ladies.
Thanks, Khaleesa. I think we have Jennifer next. You're still muted, just so you know.
I'm on my phone, so it's a little hard for me to get off. I would really like to be part of a book group for anyone that wants to on that communication, nonviolent communication. I think, is that a book, Allie?
Yes, it's a book.
And I'm thinking, I've heard that book a lot. I've heard a lot of ideas from that. I know Allie and I had a conversation where we were working on using those skills. And I think that might be a good Zoom call or something, like maybe the next month we can read the book and then everyone that's interested get together and talk about the book. Not necessarily everything that we're doing with women's councils right now, but that seems to be a book that comes up over and over and over and over again. That would be really good to discuss together outside of women's councils and women's conferences. Just how do we communicate? And I think that would take us a long ways. What do you guys think about that idea?
Thank you, Jennifer. I love that idea. Looks like you have a thumbs up in the chat. And another person who said, oh, that might have been something else actually. Okay, so we have a couple hands raised now. You're getting more thumbs up, by the way. So it looks like we have Emmeline first and then Annette.
I just wanted to point out that there's a lot of good questions in the chat. Now, let me see. So Karen's first question was, have there been any councils held since the document was put in as provisional, and where we would know the experience of women that used it? As far as I know, have there been any councils since the document was put out? Does anybody know? And I'm okay with people just talking.
I know that question was raised in a couple other places, and I know when it was first raised there, I don't remember anybody commenting back saying, yes, I have. So I personally have heard it asked before, but haven't heard a confirmation that it has been used. Just throwing that out there. Did you have another comment, Emily?
Yeah, so I was just kind of waiting to see if anybody else would say anything. So it seems, as far as those of us on this meeting, that no, there haven't been any councils.
It looks like Monica
Let's see.
might have an answer.
Can you
Go
hear
for it.
me? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah.
I only wanted to follow up. So this conversation hasn't been closed, the one that right now is taking place. I would just like to follow up on the peaceful tools for communication when there's the time, space, and energy. That's why I'm here.
I'm looking for a little clarification, Monica. Would you maybe help me understand what you mean?
Yes. On Denver Snuffer's post, one of the items that we were going to address tonight were tools for peaceful communication. And I have been on a previous council in advocacy for the situation and the people involved. So I first of all want to thank every single person here, as well as what just occurred. I don't take that as a positive or a negative. In tools for peaceful communication, conflict is a necessary part of life. And there are two different tools that may or may not be helpful depending on, apparently 3 rounds of going back and forth creates an impasse. Number one, there is a method called reflective listening. I feel about because, and then the next person would reflect back, validating what they just heard. I've had a relationship coach flat out tell me, who's very involved in the fellowship, tell me, most people do not know how to listen. They want to talk. And holding that sacred space is uncomfortable. Second tool is conscious communication, which would be very briefly, number one, what I heard you saying. 2, what you must be feeling. Again, that goes to one heart, feeling. 3, what I imagine you must have wanted. And then the next person would reflect back if that was correct or not. Communication is the strongest skill, and many times silence and listening. But I do defer back that most people want to respond or react. So I'm very grateful for Michelle and Karen having had this experience, because the number one reason why we avoid is discomfort. And I understand. I've been there. I am there at times where I need to sleep, I need food, and I am multitasking. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Monica. That was I really appreciate that. I have Jennifer and Annette also. Jennifer, was your hand still raised for another comment back to an earlier conversation, or did you need to put it down? Okay, and then Annette, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Monica, for that little summary. That was excellent. And just there are people who are part of this movement who are qualified to teach these communication skills. So rather than it's almost like you need somebody experienced and skilled at it to kind of guide the group. And so I would recommend that we, contact some of these people and see if they could help us. And it might help the women immensely as we reason together, to learn these tools and skills. So there is an online little group. It's a small part of one of the fellowships that is practicing these skills every week. But I know there's qualified people to help us, and I think we need somebody experienced.
Thank you, Annette. It looks like your hand is still raised if you'd like to take it down. Thanks. Oh, another comment? Go for it. Oh, maybe not. Okay. So, there was another question earlier. Since nobody's hand is raised right now, I'll circle back to this really quickly. So, there was an ongoing conversation about Shireen's first question raised earlier. What will the November vote actually be on? And is it added to scripture, or what does accepting it mean? So Amy, you commented about these votes on that were raised in potential for the June vote. I don't know that Cammie's planning on those still. I'll just throw that out there that we have to ask Cammie for sure. Emmeline also asked, if these questions are voted on and a majority is found, then what will be the punishments if these new rules are broken later? And so those were a couple things. Someone else also asked, I'm wondering the same thing, when it's voted on, is it binding? So just wanted to raise those questions so they could be voiced, and I'll offer my own little 2 cents. I think the November conference right now is kind of in the works and not really decided on what the agenda will be. But I think that those 4 questions originally to the June vote, I don't think those are coming up in November, is my guess. So if there are no more comments right now, maybe this would be a good time to start on the document. How do we feel about that? Okay, we have some thumbs up. So, what do you think would be the best way to do that? Would you like someone to share that on their screen? I could share it on my screen and we could just go over it together. Would you rather it not be on the screen so you can see people's faces while they're talking? If you have a preference, if you want to say like document into the chat, that will mean I'll share a screen and you can see the document. If you'd rather see faces, send faces to the chat. Okay, it looks like we're getting documents, so I'll give it a little longer, but we'll pull up the document right now. Okay. Okay, so can everybody see that all right? Okay. So this is where you get that statement. This is a voluntary provisional use document and the title, Provisional Guidelines for Women's Councils. So the first order of business is home fellowship. And where it says more discussion needed means that at the November conference last year, this was one of those points that was not, it was unanimously agreed on that we would accept this document for a year on a voluntary trial basis. So I think that means it's not required that you abide by this document if you conducted a women's council in the last year, but it's a voluntary experiment kind of. And where you see more discussion needed, in my understanding, please jump in and correct me if I'm not understanding this right. It's meaning this was one of those points in which there wasn't agreement that everyone agrees with this procedure. So, would we like to, okay, someone said zoom in a little bit. I'm gonna try to zoom and let me know when it's better. How does that look? Is that better? Should I zoom out a little bit or zoom in more? Okay, thumbs up. So, back here, I can't see your faces, so you might have to open mic and just call out if you need to let me know of something. I'm gonna jump back here for a second. How do we want to go through this? Do you want someone to read it aloud, this first chunk, and then we discuss it? Should we just start with home fellowship, read each of these points, and then pause for discussion?
Allie, I'm willing to read some if somebody wants to help me. We can both read, 2 or 3 people.
Okay. Okay, so start with 1 point. So Marlene, would you like to just read the home fellowship chunk, starting at home fellowship and then ending at Roman numeral 4?
Okay.
Thanks.
Number 1. My screen is weird. I need to get back to where you're at. Hang on just a second. There we go. Home fellowship. More discussion needed. Scriptures.info, TNC 15757A. Accused is allowed to identify his home fellowship with the following caveats. I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, if there are questions, council members are allowed to make inquiries within the fellowships. The man can provide names for verification or clarification. Number 2, if for whatever reason a home fellowship cannot be agreed upon, the council takes place in private at a general conference. 3, if there is no home fellowship, the council takes place in private at a general conference. 4, general conferences are meetings, gatherings where all members of the community are invited to attend.
Thanks, Marlene. I'm gonna go really quick before I take a comment. I'm just gonna try this. So can you still see the document if I do it this way? Someone shout out and tell me if you're still seeing the document. Okay, good. So now I can see my Zoom screen too. So sorry about that. Okay, Emmeline, go for it.
Okay, so what in private means if it is also a general conference. So if a general conference is all members are invited to attend, then how can it also be in private? That's what I'm wondering.
Thank you, Emmeline. Great question.
And would it be okay if like anybody jumps in if they have a response
I think
to somebody's
so.
question?
Yeah, I would say just jump in.
This is Jennifer. I think it's not like a general session of general conference, like you don't have the women's council, like where everybody, 500 people are listening. It's done at the same location and vicinity as the general conference is, but it's in a private meeting on those like Saturday, Sunday, whenever general conference is being held. It's during that time when everybody is in town. But you're not going to have 500 people listening to it. So that's the private part of it.
So then my
And
next
we've done
question
that
would be,
before. And we've done that before where it's just had a meeting kind of off to the side.
Mhm.
But it's
So
at the same location as the general conference.
So my next question would be, why would it matter if it is taking place at the same time as a general conference? And say there's no home fellowship, who would comprise the council then?
Well, I don't know all of the reasons why it's important, other than that's what's in the Revelation. And what I have found is the Lord's wisdom is better than my best judgment. So that's what he said. So I don't think we can change that part. And the wisdom behind that is the Lord's. And we'll discover that over time. I think we can talk about why we think that's a good idea, but it's in the Revelation, and that's why we do that. If it wasn't in the Revelation, I don't know if it would be necessary. Does that answer your question? Is it Emmeline that I'm talking to?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I don't know if
So I'm trying to
hearing
pull up
correctly.
TNC 157 at the moment. So give me one sec. I just wanted to make sure that's what it says in there is general conference and in private in the same sentence. That's kind of what I'm confused about.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Do you have that, Allie, that you can put that up on the screen?
Oh, perfect.
Yes, I'll pull that up right now.
My computer's being slow.
That's okay. I'm having a hard time getting off and on mute, so that's why. Sorry for background noise, but
How does that work? Is that visible for everybody?
yeah. Do you
I
want to
can
read
see
that,
it.
Emmeline?
Yeah.
Am I saying your name right? Is it Emmeline?
Yep,
Okay.
Emmeline. So I'll just
Oh,
go
sorry.
halfway down. A council of
She's
12
got it
women
highlighted
must be
if you want.
convened either in the man's home fellowship among those who are acquainted with his daily walk, or in private at a general conference, also including among the 12 women from the conference those who are acquainted with his daily walk, so that no injustice results. So general conference, I'm seeing it isn't capitalized or anything, and maybe could also mean, like, this is just my opinion or an interpretation of it that I've heard. A general conference doesn't necessarily mean it's an organized, like every single person is invited type of thing, but a gathering of 12 women could be called a general conference because it's I don't know, I'm not explaining this very well. A conference is just a gathering of people, right? So maybe a general conference means that anyone can attend, but just those that are part of the council, like the 12, are the ones voting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think though, when it says general conference, like we all know what a general conference is. We have regional conferences, we have general conferences. And if we need to decide what a general conference is, that would be a good discussion. But I've heard this reasoning that women says, like, we're going to call our women's council a general conference. And if we don't have basic terminology that we can agree on, this is going to be super difficult. And And I think even, I don't know, it might even be the topical guide or different things like, at least I think a general conference is something that's organized. We usually do it 2 or 3 times a year. Everyone's invited and it usually lasts 1 to 4 days. I don't know if anyone has a different definition of that, but that would be something that needs to be decided, because if we can't decide that a general conference is these meetings that we have a few times a year, and it can be, a women can call anything that they do a general conference, that causes a lot of issues of just even understanding the terminology. And like like in Karen's paper, what I heard Karen and Michelle talking about, it's like even having the same understanding of what this means, that's a big deal. So anyway, sorry.
I agree. I think it is good to discuss these things like we are doing, and come to an understanding for ourselves of what these things mean. I just saw Amy's comment saying a general conference is the meeting of people from across multiple fellowships. And I think I 100% agree with that, because regional conference in this case would be a conference of just one fellowship, but general would be a conference of multiple fellowships. But I think in private, I think those words added to that sentence doesn't mean, or makes it so that the general conference that it's talking about isn't something that every person would be invited to. It would just be a conference of at least 12 women from multiple fellowships. That would be my understanding of that.
So if it was framed like that, wouldn't it look more like it being held at a private general conference instead of in private at a general conference? Like, I can see what you're saying, but I think just looking at the wording helps clear up the confusion there.
Well, when I first read that, that was my initial thought, was it's a private conference of multiple of women from multiple fellowships. But if it just said a general conference, like so that would answer my question earlier of why would it matter if this council of 12 women is being held at the same time as a random general conference that's happening, in the movement among covenant Christians. Why does it matter that it's at the same time? There's no explanation for that. So that's why I'm leaning more towards the interpretation that that it's a general conference of women from multiple fellowships that is held in private.
So I think that's a really, really good question. And what I would say is the instruction we've been given is to look to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So when you do that and you think about what the Bill of Rights and Constitution might be looking at and might be talking about, it would be kind of based around jurisdiction, right? So you'd be looking at a like a state type of hearing, which I would equate to a home fellowship, or a more federal type of I don't know, women's council, which would be more of the general conference. I don't think that's the only thing that's tucked into all of this, but I do feel like that continuously comes up for me again and again and again. So yeah.
So if I can jump in here, for me to go to a general conference is kind of a big deal. It's a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of time away from my family. And the last thing that I want to do at a general conference is go huddle myself away in some room with a bunch of women while we hash out some man's bad behavior. Like that would be the worst. I want to hang out with my friends and be with everyone and hear the speakers and participate in all the activities that have been lined up. So as far as general conferences go, I think there's multiple ways to define or to recognize what a general conference is. It's not confined to a single fellowship. It's multiple fellowships.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Amy. I think I wouldn't want to miss out on a general conference that's happening in order to attend a council about a man's behavior at the same time.
But why does that matter? Like, why would that matter whether you wanted to do that or not? If the purpose is to do what the Lord is asking you to do, you would do what he was asking you to do. And your feelings about whether you want to be there at a general conference or not are kind of immaterial. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do the Women's Council.
But Kalisa, I don't think that that what it's saying is talking about a general conference, capital G, capital C, where it's a council happening at the same time as another unrelated general conference where everyone is meeting. I agree with Amy that it wouldn't make sense that the Lord is asking us to attend a council while at the same time sacrificing our chance to confer with everyone in the movement that is at a general conference.
It looks like Kylie has a response, so let's go to Kylie.
Oh gosh. Okay, hi. I have had a recent discovery that reasoning together means providing reasons, and I know our feelings feel valid, but having a feeling of not wanting to miss out on something is not an actual reason when scriptures are expressed saying something different. So I don't know if anyone would prefer to go spend time doing a women's council in the middle of a general conference. But like Kalisa said, if that's the expectation, then your feeling is not a reason to not do that or to interpret the words differently. And I truly don't know what they say. I just have recently gained an appreciation for reasons over feelings and preferences. So with that in mind, I don't know if that's going to be helpful or not, but the instructions are going to be instructions no matter what we feel about them. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I haven't been thanking people, so thank you each for your comments. Looks like we have quite a few hands, and it looks like they're all in response to each other. So let's go to Karen next, I believe.
I was going to say that, I've had a couple, Emmeline, your mom has before, tried to explain to me that thought process that you were sharing. And I'll be honest, it always went over my head. I never understood what she was trying to say because I just assumed that means general conference, capital G, capital C. And honestly, for the first time ever of having somebody try to tell me that perspective, I finally got what you were trying to say. And so thank you for opening my eyes to that, because I always just was like, it's a general conference. What do you mean? What's a general conference? But so I do see what you are saying. And I guess this would fit under one of those things where maybe there's more ambiguity there than what I realized, because I just thought it was a no-brainer what it was. But there is some truth to, I can see, and I'm not going off your emotions and reasonings, I'm just going off of, I can see what is being said on that. And then there was something else that I wanted to say, and that was just a little bit of background before we go too much further on this. I was asked by Stephanie and Q in an email back in February and March if I would explain to them why I had some concerns about the provisional document. Specifically, I was asked, can you show where it is that you feel like it's adding to what the Lord said and where it's not? And I think it'd be important for us as we're going over this, that I don't know how we would show this or not, but there are portions that are being read in the provisional document that are right out of the what the Lord said. And then, and Jennifer was trying to mention that. I mean, and that's what brought up the screen and so forth. But then there are other portions that are adding to. And so what I did for Stephanie and Q was I took the provisional document and left it all in black, and then I put in red everything where, like on that provisional document, it says home fellowship, and then it says more discussion needed. And I pointed out every time you see the words more discussion needed, or there's another word that gets used in here, not disputed. Sometimes somebody will say disputed after it. Those are disputed or more discussion needed because they're topics where people are saying, like home fellowship. This is one of those terms where it's not defined. And so is it wise to try to define this or not? So when you go down to her letter A, accused is allowed to identify his home fellowship with the following caveats. That would be, I said to Stephanie and Q, something where it's totally adding to what this would be, adding a new instruction, a new rule. I'm not trying to trigger anybody by that word. I don't know what, if you vote on it that this has to be followed, it would be a new rule that is beyond what the Lord gave us. And there are reasons why that would be a concern. And I think that would be worth talking about also as we're, in this one first paragraph. What is it? Why would that be a concern? And dealing with different men who attend different fellowships, why would it be a concern to let him choose? Because I particularly specifically was in a council for a man on adultery, and he switched to another fellowship and then tried to basically claim, well, you guys can't, you're not my home fellowship anymore. I'm divorcing you as my home fellowship. So there are concerns why adding this new instruction to what the Lord said might cause problems. But on the pro would be, for me as a woman who's about ready to maybe do one, is to try to think through, can I get agreement? My first effort would maybe be to try to get agreement from this man. Do you consider this your home fellowship? I mean, I always think that's important to try to do. And then when you go down to her next things, if there are questions, council members are allowed to make inquiries with the fellowships. It's an addition to what the Lord said. If you make this a rule, it's an addition. But it could be wise for a council to do that of their own volition. Anyway, you go down. I just have a whole for all of these items, an explanation of, is this actually what the Lord said, or is it adding to it? And if it's adding to it, what could be the concern? What could be the reason why we may not want to add this as a mandate? So I just thought I would bring that up.
Thank you for sharing. So, Michelle, was your comment specifically in response to somebody else's comment, or did you have a different comment on home fellowship?
Oh, it was just to add, I mean, when you read in Preserving the Restoration, it says if a man's worthiness to function is called into question, a conference can be convened to deal with the question. So if you look at that timing, that was in 2014. That was before anyone had ever even thought of doing a women's conference or council or anything. So the word that he used was conference. But later, when you have in 2017, actually, you have people having experience with that. Then he says, or in private at a general conference. So he says, I have told you that to remove authority to use priesthood outside of a man's family requires a unanimous decision of 12 women. A council, so he's changed the word from conference to council, because that's what people are calling them. A council of 12 women must be convened either in the man's home fellowship among those who are acquainted with his daily walk, or in private at a general conference. And so by then we had general conferences, and so now everybody kind of had an idea of what a general conference was. And so he was just using the words that we're used to. So if you have to look at general conference in the context of when it was used, what he would mean by that. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you, Michelle. We have Marlene next.
So I have a question for everyone, but most specifically, my question is for women who have already served on a council, because I have not. My question in the second part of this section, if for whatever reason a home fellowship cannot be agreed upon, the council takes place in private at a general conference. This is my question, and I'd like to hear from at least as many as possible of you who have already done this. Do you feel that this has to be done physically in person in the same room? Because I know with this latest conference we just went through that was examining a women's council, there were women that lived far away that had to attend by Zoom. Is Zoom a good thing, a bad thing? Is it something we're going to need to use in the future if we're separated by, miles and miles and miles? And I'm not sure how I feel either way. I just like to get feedback from you guys, because it sounds to me when I read that, well, at least when I first read it, it sounded to me like this would be done in person during the same weekend that we're having a general conference for all 500 of us, men and women. Maybe that's not what this means. I would just like to hear from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Marlene. If anyone wants to chime in, you can raise your hand and send a message in the chat responding to Marlene, and I'll go to Jennifer next.
Okay, I'm figuring this out. I was thinking about Emmeline's question, like, why would we have it at a general conference? I think that's a great question. And I hadn't given a lot of thought to it, but one idea that came to me just as I was sitting here listening to people's comments, most of the time, issues around Women's Council should be done within a home fellowship. That's what I'm hearing. And it's with people that he's associating with every week, doing fellowships meetings. We have had incidents, it sounds like, where men says, oh, I don't want that fellowship, or there might be someone that has going from fellowship to fellowship. And it looks like the Lord gives a provision. If you can, have it at a home fellowship. That's the best place to take care of these problems. If you have something that it just doesn't work to do a home fellowship, which we've already talked about those reasons, then do it at a general conference. And I'm also hearing in there, if it's important enough to you to take care of this problem, because you feel like it's a general problem, it's affecting multiple fellowships, it's something that either you can't work with their home fellowship or whatever, it can't be taken care of at a local level, then make the sacrifice to do it at a general conference. And I realize that it may not be convenient. And I will tell you, any women's council and any women's conference is not convenient. It's a huge sacrifice of all those participating. But I think that's why it's important that it's at a general conference, because it is a sacrifice. And it's not just something like, oh, we want to do this for this man that's over here in this fellowship and this fellowship and this fellowship. It's like, it's important enough to me to sacrifice my sightseeing, my time away from my family, the activities, to do it at a general conference. And I know I've been asked, Jennifer, would you do a women's council for this person? I said, I'm not going to do a women's council for them. They're not my fellowship. And I don't see that problem as a big enough problem for me to put the energy into doing it. And so that's maybe one of the reasons is it is hard and it is inconvenient for the very reason that maybe don't do it unless it really is a big problem, and then do it the way the Lord has asked you to, or let the home fellowship take care of it.
Thank you, Jennifer. It looks like Emmeline has a question for you, so we'll go to Emmeline first.
Thanks, Allie. So if I have this correct, Jennifer, you were describing a man's home fellowship being, his fellowship where he is gathering and meeting often and partaking of the sacrament and whatnot. So what if this man has not been attending fellowship like for a long time, but say maybe he used to, and then his fellowship gets wind or there's evidence of him doing something that requires a council to be convened, but he hasn't been attending fellowship, and they don't really know where he is, but they've known him, for a long time. Would you still consider that his home fellowship, given your definition from before? Like, what if he just hasn't been attending fellowship?
I think there could be a couple different reasons. Either he's changed fellowships, which for me, I've changed fellowships over the years. I've had, I don't know, I've counted probably at least 5 or 6 different home fellowships since we started fellowshipping. And that's very common. There's nothing nefarious about changing fellowships and not associating with one group of people and wanting to associate with another group of people. That's one reason that they really could have changed fellowships. There also are people that don't have any home fellowship, which I recognize too. And I think the Lord says, if someone doesn't have any home fellowship, take care of that at a general conference. And it's the people that he's associating with. Like, I'm thinking if there are problems, Emmeline, are you in Boise? Is that?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Mhm.
So if there's problems happening up in the Boise Fellowship, or I had something was happening down in Arizona or Colorado or something like that, it doesn't really affect me. Unless if it does affect me, if it becomes big enough that it does affect me, then I'm going to go to the sacrifice to do it at a general conference. But if you have a problem, I think Boise should take care of the Boise problems. Now, if you have people in Boise and they never fellowship with you, but they live in Boise, I don't think they're, and I think I'm changing topics probably. So tell me, Jennifer, we're going to talk about that later. But I don't think that's part of your fellowship. I know your mom said, well, they live by us, but they never attend with us. I think these are people that you associate with because the problems are in your group. And I really don't want people from outside of my home fellowship coming in to discipline us and to tell us what we can and can't do. I would like it to be with the people that we actually like to be with and the people we choose to be with and the people that we want to be with, and not have someone outside doing it. But if there's a problem with one of us in our home fellowship that's causing a big enough problem for everyone, then do the sacrifice and have it at a general conference. Otherwise, just stay in your own business. And I think the more localized we can do it, which is in the Constitution and is, I don't know if it's in the Bill of Rights, but it's in the Constitution, most things should be taken care of at the very local level. Then you've got state and federal is not supposed to be super controlling, but just enough to hold them together. Well, we don't have that now in the United States, and we can see the problems of that. But I think if we can go back to that thinking, if we're going to have Zion, if we're going to have a group of people, then let the small community take care of their own problems. And then you might have a little bit, like permaculture, right? Then you have a little bit group of bigger people, and then you have the big general people. And
So
if
can
we
I
can get
respond
back,
to that? Really fast?
I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks.
So my question was, what if the man isn't attending fellowship, like period? What if he's not attending any fellowship, any sacrament, anything, but he is a covenant Christian, he has been, ordained with the priesthood by the vote of 7 women, but then he's gone and say he is guilty and there's evidence of him, abusing a woman or his wife or something, whatever. What
did you ask
who would be the ones
did you
part
ask
of
him
that?
Did you ask him if he had a home fellowship, or did you just assume he didn't have a home fellowship?
No. What if
Like,
this
what
is
would you do?
just,
Would you assume, well, you're actually describing a situation. So
I'm
I'm
describing a
asking,
situation. This
yeah,
man has not attended fellowship like for years.
which fellowship? Your fellowship or someone else's fellowship?
His say, okay, in this scenario, say it's my fellowship. Say in the Boise Fellowship, there is a man that used to join, like he was coming pretty regularly and then he stopped coming for a long time, but he's still a priesthood holder. He has not moved. He has not gone and found other people to fellowship with. He's just inactive, shall we say.
Okay. So he's not fellowshipping with anybody. He's just by himself.
Exactly.
And so he's done something that you found out about that you think he needs to be disciplined for, right?
No, not disciplined, but
Or
he needs
his
to
certificate removed.
that, yes, and what I think that means, all that means is we are saying that we no longer trust him to utilize the priesthood outside of his family. That's all that would be saying, is we don't think this man is trustworthy right now, and then he would need to repent and approach us and request for his certificate to be reinstated if he wants to, be part of things again, right?
But would you have a conversation with him? Would you talk to him and say, did you change fellowships? Are you fellowshipping with someone else? What is
Absolutely.
your situation? So
Absolutely.
you've had that conversation and he's told you he's not fellowshipping with anyone. Is that correct in your scenario?
Yes. Or
okay, and
say he could be lying. Like, so I guess my point is,
or could he tell you, like, I do have another fellowship? And
yeah.
and then you can
But
call that
he's
fellowship and
not.
says, hey, is this person in your fellowship? So you could follow up
Yeah.
if it was a lie, right?
So I guess my point is for asking, and I was seeing Joanna's comment, and I'm so sorry for taking up so much time. I really like what Joanna said. I think she brings up a great point. She says some fellowships are 5 members, other fellowships could be 50 members. It might be impossible to find 12 women in one fellowship. And I would add to that, it might be impossible to find 12 women in one fellowship that are willing to participate in a council for a man. And so that's why I am questioning, the specifications that it needs to be a council of only women from his home fellowship, because I don't think that is quite often possible. And a general conference would mean a conference of at least 12 women from multiple fellowships, especially if this man doesn't have a home fellowship.
Okay, so you had a few different questions in there. One of them, I don't think he's saying every person in there needs to be in his home fellowship, but I do think it needs to originate, and as many women, like if there's only 7 women in that fellowship or 6 that can do it, as many women from that home fellowship need to be part of that. I know I was part of one that it originated the home fellowship, but they didn't quite have 12, and so they brought in other people that were also well acquainted with him to that. I think that's, in my opinion, that's totally appropriate, but it originated in the home fellowship. That's one question. And then the other one that you asked, if this man is really by himself and you feel like he's a danger to the community, but he's not associating with the community, which that's a little bit, I don't quite understand that, but maybe I don't know the scenario about that. I think it needs to happen at a general conference, as the Lord has said, if he doesn't have a home fellowship. And I think that's why we were given the second option to address, just like ones that you have said, Emmeline. I think that's why we have that second option, because that could be a very real situation that happens. Probably not likely, but it is possible. And so we have this option to handle those exceptions.
Looks like Karen has a comment. Are we ready to go to Karen?
Am I done with my questions
Well, I
about me?
have a question for you, Jennifer.
Oh, another one? Okay, I don't know if I'm getting timed, but I think I am way past my time.
Okay, this one's gonna kind of put you on the spot, and I
Oh, Karen, I am used to being on the spot. You don't even need to worry about that.
Okay, I hope we're small enough group. There's 20, but one of us on here. I really liked what you were saying, to Emmeline, like one dialogue before where you were talking about the federal versus the state, type of comparison, and you were speaking about, really that we should emphasize. Our first emphasis always should be to try to take care of something in a home fellowship. But we're acknowledging that this can be tricky sometimes because of various reasons. Most of the time, it's pretty clear cut, but there are occasions where it's not. And then what you were saying is basically then it should be done in a general conference. Okay, so here's where I'm going to put you on the spot. The very first one that was done, and no names mentioned, but the very first one that was done, that man did have a home fellowship that he claimed. He did claim a home fellowship. But what I'm trying to find out is, okay, so what you said tonight was that if there's like you didn't use the word compelling, but if there's a problem that's, a person is perceiving as serious enough or whatever, that maybe it's not getting taken care of in the home fellowship, then maybe the second option is to go to a general situation. But the problem or the question I'm having is, this can be this is a very subjective perspective. Like what one person thinks is, well, that's so compelling that we need to take care of this because their home fellowship isn't. Versus, how do you decide that? Because on that first council, it was not his home fellowship. He claimed a home fellowship. It was not his home fellowship, and it wasn't done on a general conference. Now I understand.
Are you talking about the one I did?
Yeah, and I understand that the revelation came, days
after.
It came days before. It came days before. But so I'm just trying to figure out, like, so what is the justification, like, for example, on that? There was not really people that were acquainted with his daily walk, really. It was kind of a stretch. And he claimed a home fellowship, and it wasn't done at a general conference. So would you say that you've evolved in your perspective, or do you see something like that happening again?
Yeah, I think I understand your question. And my answer to that, when I called the very first women's council ever, and that was in 2017.
Right.
And I called that, started working on it in May, called it the beginning of July, right? The revelation for the covenant was not given at that time. I did that with, only thing I had was preserving the restoration to call that conference. And did the best I could with that information. If the information that is now in the covenant would have been given before I called that conference, I wouldn't have called it. Now, we went through at the beginning and talked about that, and it was resolved, and it was decided, it wouldn't be illegitimate. Like, I got the whole transcript of how that played out. But what I'm saying is, I don't know why the Lord didn't give us what was in the covenant back in 2014, because he could have. And
didn't he have anything about home fellowships, though?
No, he didn't have anything about home fellowship. There was nothing about in private at a general conference. There was nothing about daily walk. If you look at what's in preserving the restoration, that's it that we had. And we followed those instructions, all of the ones in preserving the restoration. I would not.
You would not do it again.
Knowing the revelation in the covenant, if I would have had that information, I would have never even touched that council. Now, the Lord's timing if he wanted me to do that council and he knew I wouldn't have touched it, and then he decided that's why he gave, I don't know. I've gone through the rounds of figuring it all out, and I guess we'll ask him when we see him, why didn't you give that information? But I would not do that council with the information we have, because it would not be correct. And even after the revelation was given, I was asked, approached by people, Jennifer, you hold council here. I'm like, no, I am not doing it. I'm not in his home fellowship. I'm not doing that. And so I didn't have the information, Karen, and that's why I made the decision I made. But if I had the information, I wouldn't have even started to do the council.
So do you see anything as like, just from your subjective view, now where we are now, so set that aside, where we are today, is there anything in your mind that would make it where if
I would have done it at a general conference?
I mean, like, where you would say, wait a second, the home fellowship's not acting. I know such and such a thing, and I'm going to hold this at a general conference. I mean, still following the thing, but what is egregious enough? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think what is egregious where I would say, okay, the home fellowship's not acting. I mean, I can think of one that I was almost involved in. I can think of one where I threatened the guy. I did threaten the guy, and Whitney Horning and I both threatened him and gave a warning. If we said, you're out of line and we're calling you out on the carpet on this, we're letting you know so that you can say you've been talked to. We talked to him for an hour and a half, trying to call him to repentance, trying to show him through the scriptures where he was wrong. And he just disregarded it, right? But we said in it, if you persist in this and we find out about it again, we will hold a council on you. Now, in the end, his home fellowship did pull through and do it. But initially, the woman who called it couldn't get enough people just in her home fellowship. So she reached out to me and a couple other people and said, would you be willing to be on the council? And because I had been involved in warning him, I was like, okay, I feel obligated to do that. I will. And then in the end, they got enough at their home. But I'm going, I did. So I can see something where it would happen. I'm saying I think it can happen. But it is a.
Okay, so do you have a specific question for me, Karen?
Yeah, my question was, what do you see as would be compelling? What type of thing would be compelling enough that you would go out of the leaving it to the state and move to the federal kind of thing?
I've only ever called one women's council ever. And that was that one back in July of 2017. I have not found anything compelling. Personally, that would compel. I'm not saying that there isn't, but if there was something compelling enough, I would hold it at a general conference. That means it was super important to me. Like, because I have to, like the lady said, I have to sacrifice all the things else that you want to do at a general conference and get a room and pay for a room and all of that other kind of stuff that causes the expense, right? I would do it at a general conference, and I would make sure that there were at least 2 women there that were acquainted with his daily walk. And then I think it would be completely legitimate, and I think it would be called for. That would be difficult, I understand. But if I felt compelled and I thought something was serious enough to warrant it, I would make sure it was at a general conference and it included at least 2 women acquainted with his daily walk, because it says women, and so that means 2 or more, and try to get as many people acquainted with this man as possible. I think that's what I would do. And I've got to take a little quick break.
Obviously, yeah.
If anyone has a question for me, I've got animals that I've got to put away. And so I will be back like in 10-15 minutes. So I don't know if there's any other questions for me or if you guys want to just discuss, but I will be back shortly. I'm not ignoring anyone. I just have to do my jobs. So
thanks, Jennifer.
All right. Thank you for asking your questions.
It looks like we have Kalisa next. Thank you both for your comments and questions. Go for it, Kalisa. It looks like you're still muted, Kalisa, if you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. Hey, Emmeline, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, the way that you're defining the difference between a women's council and in a home fellowship and one at a general conference. So am I understanding that you're saying that if a women's council is not comprised of like just members of the Man's Home Fellowship, then it becomes a general conference? Am I understanding that correct?
That's a good question. I think by definition, yes, it would then be a general conference, because a women's council could be referred to as a conference of women, right? Because a conference just means a gathering of two or more people. And a general conference, and now it doesn't specify of women, but I've known councils that have also had men participating and just listening in, but they're not doing the actual voting. And I don't see any problem with that, especially if the men are there in support of their wives, who are going to be the ones who are voting. I believe that if there are women from multiple fellowships, because there are not enough women in the Man's Home Fellowship to participate in the Council of 12, I believe it would then be called a general conference. But I'm also confused a little bit by Stephanie's comment of a general conference does not mean a gathering of a few associated fellowships. It means a capital G general conference, meaning a gathering of the whole body. And I'm wondering, does that mean a gathering of the whole body of believers, of men and women? And who would be actually voting in that? And are the men included as well?
Oh, I have a follow-up question, and that would be how are you differentiating between a women's council and a conference then? Because if as soon as you, I mean, there's a difference, right, between a conference and a council. And why would the Lord not specify that unless you have all 12 members from the home fellowship, that it's not held in his home fellowship? There's no specification made there.
So to answer that, I think a council is always a conference, but a conference is not always a council. So you can say conference to describe a women's council, but general conference would specify that it's regional, or I mean, it's more widespread. Looks like Stephanie wants to speak.
Go for it, Stephanie. Thank you both for your comments.
Okay, just a quick clarification. A women's conference, a women's council when they can't decide the home fellowship or daily walk or don't have enough women, is to be held at a general conference, a gathering of the whole body. The ones that we do every 6 months, just coincidentally or whatever. It is still a women's council holding to all of the same women's council proceedings. So only women participate, just the way they do if it were held in a home fellowship or somewhere else. This idea of a women's council can rise to the level of a women's conference is just a way to get around the sacrificial work of doing it at a general conference, which admittedly is a gigantic pain in the butt. But stop. There's no splitting hairs on this. And it's not a capital G or a small g or in one place or a capital G and a small g in another place. There's no distinction between the two, none whatsoever. And to Marlene's question, yes, it doesn't matter if it's a women's council held in a home fellowship and you don't have enough people, but you need people from outside of the fellowship to participate. Zoom is a perfectly acceptable way to do it.
because that's what we have at our disposal. So I would like this to be over, general conference, the whole body. It is a women's council held at a whole body event just exclusively with women. It gives you the opportunity to bring in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more people, however many you need, because you couldn't meet the level of a home fellowship or daily walk. I hope that makes it clear.
That's great. Did you write that?
Thank you, Stephanie. So it looks like it's just about 8:50. I need to start on closing comments. I'm not going to take very long doing closing comments in future meetings, but because this is kind of our first one in this new portion of this discussion series, I'd like to run some ideas by you guys and see how you're feeling about this. So someone made a comment earlier in the evening. I think it was Monica. Monica, I really appreciated your comments. And you specifically talked about how in the agenda that was posted on Denver's blog, something that was outlined as something we would be doing in the meetings, we're learning, practicing tools for peaceful communication. So the idea thinking was maybe sending on different results-oriented or process-oriented meetings. So I was thinking for the full moon meetings, maybe we continue to discuss this document, working our way through reasoning about these different points, like the Roman numerals, the numbers and the Roman numerals, discussing those situations. That could be a kind of meeting that would be maybe practicing what's in the June 20th Revelation, reasoning together, learning from past women's council's experiences, and learning to come to agreement. And then on the new moon meetings, those potentially being focused on the process. So learning how we could engage better with each other, learning how we could better understand each other, and maybe even just connection. And so my idea for the 24th of July, because I meant to change the date, because it's a very important day, you guys. This is our history. So some people might be pioneering or watching fireworks, going to the rodeo that day. We might have a pretty small, intimate meeting. Maybe a couple of you will be busy and you're not going to be able to attend that one. So I thought as a fun way to maybe take the edge off a little bit and orient ourselves away from the results, the vote, the November conference, the document, maybe we could take a break and just take this date, this Pioneer Day, to focus on getting to know each other better. And so I'm wondering if you guys want to tie your bonnet under your chin, bring some butter to shake in a mason jar, and have a little ice cream social together. Maybe everyone could bring some ice cream. You can dress up as a pioneer, change your Zoom background to a hand cart or a beehive or something really Utah history, in case anyone here isn't from Utah. That's Pioneer Day, the day that Brigham Young and everybody else came into the Salt Lake Valley. So that's why we celebrate it in Utah. And I could send out, or anybody else can send out, some kind of get to know you questions where we can try and start this session of our meetings off on some connection, getting to know each other better. And hopefully that will get us to start the next meetings with more unity and compassion for each other as we're discussing these things. So that's an idea for the 24th. If you hate it, you can shoot it down. If you don't like ice cream, you can bring sorbet if you're lactose intolerant. And then I'm thinking maybe for future new moon meetings, we could do something like these book club ideas. In past meetings, someone mentioned doing a 4 Agreements book club. We could read that book together and discuss those kinds of communication tools. We could do a nonviolent communication book club, practice that a little bit. thinking maybe we have these intermittent change of pace things. So full moon, we come back to this document, we continue discussing. New moons, we talk about how we can love each other better and practice the first and the second great commandments. So, any thoughts on that? We're getting some good emojis here. So, sounds like there's some consensus. Okay, well, we'll plan on that for now. I'd love to invite everybody if there's anything you'd like to recommend for a future new moon meeting. If you want to recommend something we could study together, or some tools we could practice, some other ideas, feel free to email that to me. I'm going to paste my email in the chat again. And then I know we're kind of cutting off in the middle of a conversation because we've run out of time. So if you have any lingering questions, feel free to write them down, or you can email those to me. I could bring them up again in the next meeting. And it looks like we're probably just going to pick up in the next full moon meeting where we've left off here, still in home fellowship. So feel free to hold on to those questions if you want to bring them again. And I think that's about it. New moon meeting, we'll do an ice cream social. So pick some ice cream up on your way home from soccer practice or work, whatever you got to do, and we'll get to know each other better. I'll send some questions, some little prompts if you want to think of an answer, to the Slack group and the email group. And if anyone needs help getting onto the Slack group, feel free to message me and I'll send you an invitation. Okay, any last comments? I'll probably wait until 9 and close the meeting out, but we do have a closing prayer. Marlene, would you like to say our prayer now?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful that we can be gathered here as sisters and friends, trying to understand and do thy will, to strengthen our communities. And I ask a special blessing that we can all have soft hearts toward one another. We realize that we're human, we're coming at this from different life experiences and backgrounds and understanding. And I especially ask to please forgive me if I have hurt anyone's feelings tonight. That wasn't my intention. I truly love all of the sisters here tonight, and I ask that we can continue to love each other and work together and really create a wonderful community that everyone feels safe and everyone feels valued and everyone feels heard. And I say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank